Okay, hello guys, welcome to week 3 of month 2, right? So today we're starting something new. Up to this point we have been learning about Python itself. We have worked with the variables, conditions, loops, functions, classes, etc, and other Python concepts, right? So today we're going to start using Python to build web applications. So the framework that we're going to learn is Django, one of the most used and one of the most popular frameworks that we can find out there, right? So Django is a powerful web framework, right? So I want you guys to be able to know what Django is and understand how it works and understand its role in the backend, right? And identify the type of system that you can build using Django, right? So a framework is a collection of tools, rules, and ready-made functionality that helps developers build applications much faster. So even with a framework, you are still going to be writing code. But the difference now is that you are no longer starting from scratch. You already have something built in for you that you can build on top of it, right? So because without a framework, that means you have to start from scratch, write the first line of code, right? And with a framework, you're going to use existing bricks, doors, windows, and other tools, right? So inside the Django toolkit, Django gives us what structure and common tools for building web applications, and we're supposed to follow that structure that Django provides. So it provides URL routing, database tools, user authentication, forms, security features, administration panel, and a development server, right? So we are going to learn about everything, about all of these 7 things as we go throughout the course, right? So there are 2 sides of software when it comes to software development. There's front-end development and back-end development, right? So the front-end is the face. It's what the people see and use on a daily basis, right? Like your WhatsApp, your Facebook, your TikTok, or a website. That is the front end, right? And then the back end is the brain. It works behind the scenes to process information. We as the users, we don't see the back end. What we see, we just see WhatsApp, we send a message, we receive a message. That's what we see. But what's happening behind the scenes, how that person you're talking to sees the message and how they respond, then you see the message. That's the back end. That's the brain. So it handles most of the work. It's the most important part of software development, right? So for an example, at the backend in action, let's take a look at what a user logged in, right? So we have what a UI, right, where a user is going to enter their login details, right? Then where they enter their login details, that's the front end. And the front end what sends the information to a backend. Then the backend is the one that's going to check, does this user exist? If the user exists, it checks, is the password correct, right? So when it checks if the user exists, or if it checks if the password is correct, that's when the backend retrieves what the user's information from a database, right? So if the user exists and the password is what is correct, then the backend will now send back a response to the front end, right? So we can use Django to build all of this backend functionality easy and fast, right? So I remember Mr. Django once asked about HTTP. I remember I talked about HTTP 404 and the HTTP 200, right? So usually when on number 6, when Django sends a response back to the front end, it's usually those codes, 404, 200, 202, etc. We're going to look at them, right? So with Django, we can use it to build mobile applications, right? School systems, online shops, WhatsApp chatbots, and payment systems, right? So almost all of the software that you interact with on a daily basis, they have it can be Django, it can be Fast API, but they have Python running behind. For example, Instagram also uses Django as a backend. It's one of the many backends that they use, right? So let's remember that Django is a Python web framework, and the framework provides ready-made tools and structure like pre-made bricks for a house, as an example, right? And Django is mainly used to build web application backends. A backend handles the logic, authentication, databases, and Data processing is the brain of an application, right? And Django can support websites, mobile application, payment systems, almost everything, right? So Django helps Python developers to build secure and organized backend systems without creating everything from the beginning, right? So before we begin, does anyone have a question about what a backend is and what Django is? Okay, so it was clear. Okay, right. So I hope everyone installed Django and Django REST framework, right? I sent the tools on the WhatsApp. I hope everyone installed that. Right. Yes, Mr. Dupes.
Yeah, I'm a bit struggling. I did run that code that you gave me, the first one. Then it said, I think it's successful, but I don't know where to get it from there, where I can pick it up from there.
So you did run it and you didn't get any errors.
No, no errors. Can I send on WhatsApp what I have so that at least maybe you can see?
Okay.
Sorry for this thing.
You are using Windows, correct? So try and search something like this: Python-m Django version. Right.
On my VS Code.
Yes, yeah, you can do it on your VS Code.
It's okay. I'll do that. You can proceed.
And then just press enter. And you're supposed to get the version of Django installed on your laptop. If you get something like this, it can be any version, then the installation was successful. Right. So I was still going to go through the installation tutorial just in case if some of you guys had any challenges installing Django, right? So installing Django and Django REST framework, right? For others, it can take time. It depends on your laptop and also on your network, right? So if you see it taking a lot of time, don't worry, it's going to finish eventually, right? So one of the commands that you are going to work with most of the time in the terminal, right? This is my terminal in the bottom of my screen, right? Is mkdir, right? Let's say mkdir Django. Then I hit enter, right? If you look at my in my sidebar, I have I now have a new folder called Django, right? Let me delete it. I deleted the folder. Let me say mkdir on my terminal Django, and then I hit enter. Then it's going to create a new folder in my sidebar, right? So what mkdir means, it just means make directory. So a directory is simply a folder, right? So in software development, we don't call folders, right? We call them directories, right? So when you hear someone say create a directory or whatever, they mean that create a folder. And sometimes you don't have to go to your file explorer, create the folder one by one, right? You can just come to your terminal and say mkdir, the name of the folder. Then it's going to create a folder for you, right? But the difference is that it's going to create the folder wherever you open your terminal, right? So then we have something that we call cd, right? Say cd Django, right? If you look at my terminal, I had documents Python bootcamp, right? On documents Python bootcamp, that's where I ran mkdir Django. It created a folder inside bootcamp, right? Then I ran cd Django. Now I have documents Python bootcamp Django. What this means is that it moved my terminal into the Django directory. It's no longer inside bootcamp. So if I run, let's say mkdir example, right? I'm running the code, right? It created a new folder, but this time it didn't create the folder on inside bootcamp. It created the folder inside the Django directory, right? So if you want to use your terminal to create a folder, you can use cd. You can use cd, right, to move from one folder to another. So what cd means, it just means that change directory, right? So it means that change of my folder, move from bootcamp to Django, right? If I say cd space 2 dots, I go back, I'm no longer inside the Django folder, I'm now inside the bootcamp folder, right? Then if I say cd Django, I'm now back into the Django folder. Okay. So also mind your words. Python is sensitive. The terminal is sensitive to certain characters. So a small letter D and a capital letter D is two different things. It's not the same thing. Okay. So if you think that this is difficult, you can still use the old way that you probably know on how to create a folder in it, and then you just open your VS Code inside that folder. But I advise you guys that to get used to this method, because it's the method that you're going to use most of the time, right? So I want us to create something called a virtual environment, right? So this is extremely important in software development as a whole, right? So the command is simple, right? But before we run it, I want you to understand why we are doing it, right? Imagine that I have two Python projects on my computer. Project A needs one set of Python packages. Project B needs another set, right? So we can say maybe project A uses Django 3 and project B uses Django 5, right? So if I don't use a virtual environment, then it's going to cause clashes. If I use project A, that means I need to downgrade my Django to Django version 3. Then if I'm on project B, then I need to upgrade my Django version to Django version 5, right? So if I don't do that, then the odds that one of the programs is not going to run because of the clashes when it comes to the versions, right? So a virtual environment gives one project its own separate Python environment, right? You can think of it like giving the project its own toolbox. Inside that toolbox, you can install the packages that that this particular project needs, right? So project A will get its own tools, project B will get its own tools. So whenever I use any project, there's not going to be any clashes because it's what? Isolated, right? So a virtual environment keeps project packages separate, right? So remember that a virtual environment keeps project packages separate, right? So to create a virtual environment, right, make sure that on your terminal you're in the correct directory, right? And then you can say python -m vnv dot vnv, right? Let me say that the11.py, right? It's python -m vnv dot vnv, right? If this script fails, then you can use python 3, right? You can say python 3 -m vnv dot vnv. So the first script can fail, but the odds that the second script is not going to fail, it depends on your laptop, right? So with this .vnv, right, this means that we are giving our virtual environment a folder, right? Once the command finishes, you should see a folder called that .vnv. So you just type it on your terminal and hit what? Enter. Then it's going to create what? .vnv in your what? In your directory. If you look at my Django directory, I now have what files. We have been include lib64, pyvnv, that is going to create these files, right? So it may the files may be different based on your laptop and on your operating system, right? So if you see your files that are not the same as mine, don't be surprised about that. It's completely normal, right? So with these files, don't change these files, never edit them. Python is going to manage those files for us, right? So don't edit these files, Python will do it for us, right? So this is what create a virtual environment, right? Right. So you have created a virtual environment, right? A small blessing.
Thank you. Say, how do I delete the environment if I created in the wrong place? I think I created it separate.
Now you can just delete the folder.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
If you delete the folder, then you delete the environment.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Right. So just because you created the virtual environment, that doesn't mean that your virtual environment is now working, right? So you need to activate what? The virtual environment, right? So you need to what? Activate the virtual environment, right? Activating the venv, right? So also this it depends on the laptop that you are using. If you are using Windows, just say .venv, right, backslash capital letter S for right, capital letter S, scripts with capital letter S, backslash again, activate, right? This is supposed to work with what? Windows, right? And if you are using Linux or Mac OS, you're supposed to say what? source.venv /bin /activate. Before you run the script, make sure that you are in the same folder that has what? The virtual environment. Right? Make sure that you are in the same folder that has the what? The virtual environment. So you do it on your terminal, then just hit what? Enter. Then just like that, your virtual environment has been turned on. So whenever you're working on your project, always turn the virtual environment on, especially if you are going to be installing external packages, right? So after turning on your VNV, right, some terminals may show something like this, right? It depends on on your terminal. So if it doesn't show it, it's fine. If it does, it's also fine, right? So you are going to see it here on the beginning of your terminal. That's if your terminal is going to show it, right? So when the virtual environment is active, right, packages we install for this project can be installed inside this project environment. Then that means they're not going to be installed globally on our machine, right? So they're going to be installed just on this project, right? So let's remember that first you have to create the virtual environment, and 2, you have to activate it. But if you exit the project and then open it again, there's no need to then recreate the virtual environment since you created it before. You just have to turn it on, right? You only create the VNV when it's a new project, right? All right. So let me clear my terminal. For those who didn't install Python, Django and Django REST framework, you can just say pip install Django and then Django REST framework. After doing this, then you just say enter. This is going to install Django and Django REST framework, right? This is how you can install them. Your computer will now install the packages. It may take minutes, hours, depending on your laptop and the speed of your internet, right? And when you're installing, you're going to see a lot of lines on the terminal, right? There's no need to memorize all of those lines. No, it's not necessary. Even if you don't understand what they mean, it's also it's fine. There's no need to be worried, right? So, like in this course, we are going to be learning about Django, right? And inside Django, we also have what we call Django REST framework, right? So Django REST framework gives Django additional tools that are useful when building APIs. So Django on its own, it doesn't have all the tools, right? So we need to then install more Django REST framework that is going to help us build APIs, right? So you do not need to understand APIs deeply today, right? So we're going to look at it's get requests, post requests, serializers, and API responses in later lessons, right? So for today, just remember that Django is our main web framework. Django REST framework will help us build APIs with Django. So when someone asks you which framework do you use, you just say Django. You don't say Django REST framework. You just say Django. The moment you say Django, then that person is going to know that you use Django REST framework, right? So for this lesson, I'm going to assume that all of us installed that Django and Django REST framework, right? If you didn't, I hope you were installing it whilst I was telling you guys what a virtual environment is and how to install Django, right? So inside your project, right, on the terminal, right, you are supposed to type the following, right? Django admin start project, right? So it's what? Django dash admin start project, right? And we're going to call project, let's just say what? Config, right? And then you what? You hit enter on your terminal, right? Say, then you hit what? Enter on your terminal. If you look at your Django folder now, you now have .vnv and config. This is your Django project. So Django dash admin start project config. So Django dash admin, this is a keyword, you don't change it. Start project is a keyword, you don't change it. The word that you change is config, right? So config can be any name. For example, let's say you can say, for example, WhatsApp backend, right? Let's say what formulas, etc., etc. So config is the name that you can change, right? So Django dash admin and start project, you can change those names, right? Okay, and then inside config now, right, you will see this manage.py. So Python created all of this code for us. There's no need for us to run it. What? There's no need for us to create this code step by step, right? So manage.py is used to run Django project commands, right? So I'm still going to see some of the commands that we're going to be running. They're all ran using what? This manage.py, right? And the command that we're going to use to run our server is also what? Run by this command, by this file. So this is, we can say this is the most important file in our project. The most important file, right? Then under config we have init, sgi, settings, urls, wsgi. All of this code, Python created it, Django created it for us, right? We're going to learn about what each of these files do, etc., etc., right, as we go on, right? What you guys must know that is very important, if you go to settings.py, I don't know if for you guys, if it's still going to be line 23, we have this secret key, Django insecure what. This is a very, very, very important key, a very critical, sensitive key. If you're working on a project, right, and you give someone this key, then just know that they are able to hack your system. They have control over your system. This key is the one that protects your system. If you give it to someone who's not working on your project, just know that that person can hack your system anytime, right? And you can also change this key within your project. Also know that. So make sure that you always keep your secret keys safe, right? And I was still going to talk about how you can keep those keys safe, right? So now that we created what? Our project, right? We need to create an app, right? So you have to say python manage.py start app, let's call it what, students, right? Let me clear my team now, right? So it's supposed to be config, right? Perfect. So after creating your project, right, you're supposed to change direction and move into into the name of your project. For this tutorial, I used config. So I'm supposed to say cd to config. Now I'm inside bootcamp Django config. When I'm inside config, then that is when I'm going to run python manage.py start app. So python manage.py start app, these are keywords. You are not supposed to change them. What you're supposed to change is what, students. This is the name of your app, right? So students is the name of your app, is the name that you can change, right? So I'm now running the script. Okay, yes, Mr. Janga.
Mr. Kumar, I think I left for about 30 seconds because of some network problems. I don't know if you can just go back 10 seconds.
Okay, so I said what, python manage.py start app students, right, is the one that's what is the one that creates an app for you, right? So python manage.py start app students, python manage.py start app, these are keywords. You're not supposed to to change them, right? You can only change what, students, right? Okay, I want to show you guys something. For example, right, if my team now, I run python manage.py start app students, right, and then I hit enter, I got what, no module names Django, error, etc, etc. Reason being is that when I installed my Django, I didn't install it inside VNV, right? When I created VNV and then activated my virtual environment, I was supposed to run this command pip install Django rest framework, right? I was supposed to run it and so that I can install them on on this project. So that's the difference. Even though you installed it, as long as you didn't install it inside your VNV, then it's not going to work, right? I hope I was clear on that. So if you get an error, don't be surprised. You can just go scroll to the top of the error. It's going to tell you module not found, no module named Django, right? Because inside the VNV you don't have Django installed, right? I just installed it outside my virtual environment, right? So now that I've installed it, let me just clear my terminal. I'm not running it again. Right, since I now installed Django and Django REST framework on my VNV, I ran python manage.py start app, and I'm going to call my app students, right? If you check inside our Django folder, we have VNV config. If you open config, we have another config that has our settings, etc, etc. We also have students, right? Students it's now the app that I installed currently, right? So this is where most of our code is going to live in, students, right? Also remember, a Django project can contain several apps. I installed what students, right? I can start another app, call it what results, call it whatever. So a project can have several apps, right? So the Django project is the larger overall system. This one config is the larger overall system, right? For example, another app could be, let's say, what, courses, right? See, I now have another app, courses, right? So although all of these what apps belong to the same Django project, right? So this is one of the ways Django helps us organize large systems. So we're going to take a look at this, right? So but for this lesson, we only want to look at one thing, and that one thing is what, students. We only want to look at what, the students what, application, right? Now since we have installed the app, right, now we need to tell Django that our project is using this app, the students app. So after running the python manage.py start app courses, start app students, or whatever, right, you need to go to your project, right? In the inside project, look for settings.py, right? Look for settings.py, right? So what I usually do, I just remove this code, these comments. For me, I find it unnecessary, right? So inside settings.py, we're going to look for something called installed apps. This, right? We're going to look for this list. So this is a list, right? Installed apps, right? So so this list contains several Django apps that you already added automatically. So never delete these apps, right? Never edit them, just leave them as they are, right? Right. So what we are going to do, we are going to add two apps, right? App number one is REST framework. Remember that we installed Django REST framework, so we're also supposed to add it on our list of installed apps, right? So you can come, usually I add it on the top, right? And take note that this is a string, right? So you can say what, REST underscore framework, and don't forget this comma after adding what, your app REST framework. Don't forget the comma, right? Okay, then we add the REST framework. Then we're also going to add what, our app that we installed, which is called what, students. So we're going to add what, REST framework and students. Always remember that when you start a project, you're supposed to add what, REST framework, and then you add the app that that you created, right? So you can either add it on top of your list, right, or you can add it what, at the bottom, right? It all works. It should all works, right? So be careful with the quotation marks and the commas. This can crash your code, right? You can spend days trying to figure out what went wrong with your code just because of these commas and these quotation marks, right? So what we are doing this because installed apps tell Django which applications are active in this project. So it by default, Django is going to know, okay, so I'm supposed to look at students and the REST framework, right? So after installing your apps, you need to register them with Django, right? So one of the common mistakes that people tend to make is not to register your apps with what is not to register your apps under installed apps, right? So creating the app is one step, right? Then registering the app is another step, right? So we are nearly ready to run our project. Before we start the server, right, we are going to run a command called, so our command is going to be called python manage.py migrate, right? It's going to be python manage.py migrate, right? So after running this command, you're just going to say what? Enter, right? And you're going to see Python running, just running some scripts and all of that. That's fine, you can ignore that, right? So remember that you're supposed to run that python manage.py migrate inside your project, right? So don't worry about memorizing all of this. So now after running python manage.py migrate, if you look at the terminal, we have what? db.sqlite3, right? So this is a what? This is a database, right? So when a new Django project is created, some of Django's built-in components need database tables. So Python automatically creates what? A database called what? SQLite3, right? So it's part of SQL, but this one is just a lighter version for testing and learning how to create systems, right? So we're going to study models, databases, and migrations much more deeply later. So today you only need to remember, when setting up this project, we run what? Python manage.py migrate. So it's 3 keywords. You don't edit those words, right? So in future lessons, when we create our own database models, migrations will become even more important, right? So to make it easy for you, when I say you run these commands inside your project, right, always look for this manage.py. You're supposed to be on the same level with manage.py, because most of the times you're going to get your project name, and inside that project name you also have the same project name, right? So what you should do, you should be on the same level with what? Manage.py, right? So you should look where manage.py is located, and then just change your direction to that same location where manage.py is located, right? So your terminal and manage.py are supposed to be on the same level, because manage.py is the one that executes all of these commands: your start app, your migrations, right? So then after running your migration, so you should always start with python manage.migrate, then followed by python manage.py run server, right? So it's python manage.py run server, right? So python manage.py run server, hit what? Enter. Then you're going to get all of this. It will now, this will also depend on the operating system that you are using, right? And if you look at this warning, this is a development server, right? So this just tells you that you're in development mode. This is not production. If in production you're going to use something like WSGI and ASGI server instead. We're going to look at this at a later stage, right? So here you go, here where it says starting WSGI development server at HTTP, right? So you take your cursor, hover it over to what? To this link. You press Control on your laptop, right? Whilst pressing Control, then you right click your mouse, right? After right clicking your mouse, then your laptop is going to open a browser. It's not going to do it inside VS Code, right? For me, it's doing inside VS Code because of an extension that I used, right? So for you, it's going to open inside what? A browser, right? Know that it's going to open inside what? A browser, and you're going to see this. The install worked successfully. Congratulations. So you ran your first what? Your first Python what? Backend server. This is your first server. So this is how most of the servers are made, right? So yeah, we're still going to look at how you can change this, and later the server return the information that you want, right? So you find your server http colon ///127 etc, right? If you close your VS Code, then this server is also going to shut down. When you open your VS Code, then you need to run it again in order for it to run successfully, right? So if you see this, that means that everything what works successfully. If you face any errors, feel free to come into my inbox or send a message on the group, then I can be able to help you, right? So what 127.0.0.1 mean, right? So this is just your own computer. This is just a server running locally on your machine, and this 8000, right? This is just a port that Django uses on your laptop as a server, right? And this get HTTP 1.1 200 etc. We're still going to look at that at a later stage, right? So for today, we successfully installed Django and ran our first server. Does anyone have a question? Anyone? Yes, Mr. Janga.
Project is what? The name of our project. It's config.
Yes, that's correct. It's config.
Okay. So we just created a folder, the Django folder, just like month one. That is what we did
Yes, that's correct.
at first.
Yes,
And then we created a virtual environment inside that folder.
that's correct.
And then we created our project.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay. So our project can be any name, or it's just that in this case your project name is config. That is why there are two configs. But if the project name is Kumalo, you can change the project name to Kumalo, and then still there will be another config under that.
No. If your project name is Kumalo, then this it's going to be Kumalo.
Okay.
So this uses the same project name.
Okay. And manage.py, what did you say it does?
The manage.py, this one is the one that runs all the scripts like your migration and even your run server. Most of the scripts that you'll be executing inside your project are run using manage.py.
Okay. And at what point was it created? Was it created when we created our project, or when we created the...
Yes, when we created the project, Django creates it for us.
That's okay. It's okay. Thank you.
So, any questions?
We are still going to receive the video and all the comments that you're writing, is it? Because for some of us, we're just watching.
Yes, I'm going to send this.
that one.
Yes, these ones.
Yes. And the video.
Yes, and the video.
Okay.
Alright, so that's it for this lesson. I'll see you guys tomorrow.